coming along and for your submission. Do you have an opening statement you'd like to tell us?
Look, no, Senator. At the previous time I appeared, which was back in 23, we made a written submission and I spoke to that submission at the time. So
nothing's really happened since then, so it's still obviously very relevant. I might just check with my fellow senators. Miss Senator McKenzie, did you want to kick off, or do you want me to go?
No, happy for you to kick off, Matt.
Okay. All right. Well, I might start there where I was suggesting that, look, it is a shame perhaps that not more progress has been made. What's your assessment at the moment, Mr Carroll, of how much time we've got left and what we need to do right now to make the Games a success?
Sure. I think to a degree progress has been made. The organising committee is certainly well established, and then the process of setting up their organisation and the operational components of that organisation. So a lot of work has been happening, which is not terribly newsworthy, and obviously they've been employing their senior leadership team, which now includes the Chief of Commercial, and very shortly they will announce the Chief of Sport, which is a very important appointment. So those sorts of things have been occurring. In terms of the interest of this committee, which is obviously around the infrastructure, the venues and things of that nature, the plan to build the new indoor sports centres across southeast Queensland is still proceeding. Doesn't get a lot of news either, but certainly. So there are things that are happening. To answer the final part of your question, Senator, yes, I think it is time to finalise any more reviews and settle on exactly what I suppose the two governments want to fund in terms of venues.
Okay, well, look, obviously there's another review occurring right now, so we'll at least wait till the end of that. But do you think there's a particular time here about when final decisions need to be made on venues? Yep.
No, I think that's the first half of this year, to be honest with you, Senator, for two reasons. One, the sports program will start to be fleshed out the following year in 2026, which is obviously very important. And importantly also, obviously, is to start the construction process or whatever work that needs to be done, which is going to take a bit of time.
Okay, thank you for that. You mentioned the governance board earlier, and that was one of the recommendations of our first report. We're glad to see that be established. Is that working well, or is that now set up well in your view? And has there been any teething issues having to set it up again after some changes in the Queensland government?
Well, certainly. The organising committee hasn't changed. It's gone away and done its job, and it's the job of the organising committee to organise the Games, as distinct from Gravalda, which has now become the new group. Excuse me, I've forgotten the acronym for it off the top of my head. That has slowed things down. I think, judging from our conversations with the 100-day review panel, they are adopting some of the things that had already been decided in terms of structure and governance. I do note that one of the things they want to look at is where legacy sits for the Games, but other than that, it seems that they're on the similar sort of path. It's now an independent organisation, totally. I appreciate that, and obviously with a new board.
Okay. Has you or the Australian Olympic Committee made a submission to the 100-day review?
We have.
Okay.
Senator,
is there any highlights you could share with us, particular things you'd like to stress?
I think it was similar to the questions. We're supportive of the decisions of the government. The decisions for venues, particularly major infrastructure venues, is one for government. The Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, we'll use it for a period of time, July, August of 2032. Those decisions are important for sports such as AFL and cricket in terms of the major stadium. For other venues, they are decisions of government. The Olympics takes the view that you need to develop any new infrastructure needs to be done for other than the Games. The Games, will use them, fantastic, but if they can be built before the Games and obviously for after the Games, that's the best way to approach sporting infrastructure.
Okay. My understanding is you are finishing up in the role?
I finish up in June, May, June, just depending on all these sorts of things. So indeed, yes.
All right. Well, maybe you can't completely speak freely just yet, but do you have any particular advice for us and the committee and for your successor, both for the preparation of the Olympics, but just more generally?
Look, I think, as you said, a bit early for any chief advice, but certainly I think, as we just said, it's important to get on with the job now. in decisions around venues, decisions around anything that's going to be built. Before I was in sport, it was in the construction industry, and the construction industry in Australia is stretched at the moment. Therefore, to be able to start to do all these venues, wherever they may be, needs to be moved along swiftly. But everyone knows that.
Yeah. Can I ask a particular question too? I believe this sort of came up early in our committee around the Paralympics, and you cover Paralympics as well?
No,
you don't do it at all.
Well, we obviously work closely together.
Oh, okay, it's a separate committee. I'm always a little bit ignorant in this area. Okay, well, I'll leave that question, and I'll go to Senator Elman-Payne.
Chair, and thanks very much, Mr Carroll, for coming before the committee again. I just want to go to the host contract. So I note that within Brisbane's host city contract, to which Brisbane City Council, the State of Queensland and the Australian Olympic Committee have agreed, item 15.3 of that contract requires, and I quote, where new permanent venues need to be constructed, the host National Olympic Committee and the organising committee for the Games shall ensure that they are not located in or adjacent to statutory nature, cultural protected areas or World Heritage sites. I note that currently the Queensland State Government is considering building several new permanent venues within Victoria Park in Brisbane, and the proposed locations of those venues are almost entirely locations on Queensland's State Heritage Register as entry number 602493 in the Heritage Register. And to use the host city contract's words, these would be in statutory cultural protected areas. Additionally, I note that an application has recently been filed to extend the heritage protection to the remainder of Victoria Park. And it would seem then that the proposal to build several new permanent venues in the park would violate item 15.3 of the Brisbane's host city contract. In those circumstances, as the host National Olympic Committee, does the Australian Olympic Committee support or oppose the stadium in Victoria Park?
Well, Senator, you're correct. That clause is in the host contract. The decision on the venues, and the International Olympic Committee needs to approve any changes of venues regardless of where they're located and regardless of whether they're permanent, new or temporary. So the Government of Queensland and the Brisbane City Council, and obviously in consultation with sports, would have to consider exactly what you've read out. And if they wish to build or change a venue, regardless of where it is, they would have to go back to the International Olympic Committee and seek their approval, which is quite possible for the International Olympic Committee to approve those. So they would have to build the case, as you pointed out, referring to the nature of where Victoria Park. At this stage, Victoria Park has not been decided, as I understand, to be a venue.
My question is whether the Australian Olympic Committee supports venues being built in Victoria Park. And I thought I saw in our submission pack a media release, I believe, from Swimming Australia, which noted that the Australian Olympic Committee supports the construction of venues in Victoria Park. Is that correct?
The Australian Olympic Committee supports the proposal by Swimming Australia to build a national aquatic centre in Queensland. We've also had conversations during the time, obviously, with the Games partners, but again, that decision has not yet been made. And I think the things you've raised will obviously have to be considered. Okay,
so further then, I guess, in relation to Victoria Park, the host city contract also says at items 15.1 and 15.2 that it requires planning, measurement and monitoring of direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions so that Brisbane 2032 are, and I quote, a climate positive Olympic and Paralympic Games. Victoria Park is often called the green lungs of Brisbane City, including by the Brisbane City Council. It's 64 hectares of green space in the heart of Brisbane, as I'm sure you're aware. And in 2023, the council began a major rewilding of that parkland, which is designed to sequester more greenhouse gases and filter air for the city of Brisbane. I believe the plan includes planting thousands of trees, creating more wildlife habitat. Certainly sounds like a sustainable plan to me. The multiple proposed permanent venues and supporting infrastructure within Victoria Park would concrete over potentially half of the park, according to the proposals that we've seen. And the embodied energy of construction combined with the lost sequestration of this parkland would seriously challenge any Olympics climate credentials. In those circumstances, combined with the World Heritage nature of the park that we just talked about, the heritage value, again, does that mean that the Australian Olympic Committee supports venues notwithstanding the need to create a climate positive Olympics according to the host contract?
Again, Senator, you are correct. That is included in the contract, the climate positive. It is something which the organising committee is very much aware and very involved in ensuring all the planning meets that particular clause in the contract. The decision of the venues, obviously, is one for government and where they're going to locate them, and therefore how they would adapt or provide other alternatives to meet the needs in terms of the positive part of the positive green part of the committee's, beg your pardon, of the host city contract. So that's the place, again, no decision has been made. Those things will have to be evaluated in any decision on any venue, wherever they may be, apart from the existing ones that have already been proposed. Any changes to that will have to be approved by the IOC, and they will take into account all those aspects you've already noted from the host city contract.
Is the AOC have any role in assisting the government in making those decisions? Does the AOC give feedback to the government in relation to this?
The decision is made by government. The AOC is a member. We have directors on the board of the organising committee. That is our forum through to any involvement in the final decision on venues, which, as I say, will have to be proposed by the government. The organising committee will adopt those decisions, and then, but any change in venue has to go back to the International Olympic Committee, as you've noted.
I understand the IOC part of it, but I guess what I'm trying to understand is whether the AOC has any input into the government decision, given that you have board members who are part of that committee.
The input we have is through the inquiries we're having and through the board members of the organising committee.
Okay, so has the AOC expressed any concerns about impacts on the heritage value or the sustainability in terms of climate positive Olympics, given the circumstances in relation to Victoria Park? Again,
no decisions have been made about anything being built in Victoria Park.
I know that, but my question is, it's definitely a proposal that's on the table, as evidenced by the submissions. My question is, has the AOC expressed any concerns about those three items in the host contract being compromised if it were to be the case that they were to build in Victoria Park?
And as I've answered you, you're exactly right. They are contained in the host contract. And therefore, when a decision of a proposal has form, in other words, if it's going to proceed, then that will have to be discussion with the International Olympic Committee. Until that such time, there is no...
With respect, Mr Carroll, I don't think you're actually asking my question. My question is, has the AOC any concerns around Victoria Park venues impacting on those aspects of the contract? That is not the same as saying a decision hasn't been made yet. I'm asking for what AOC's position is in relation to those concerns.
But both of those issues you've raised would have to be part of the proposal. Like, they would have to address those concerns you're talking about. At this point in time, the AOC has not seen a full proposal, and there may be ways of actually meeting the green credentials of the Games through other aspects of Games planning. So other venues may...
And how might you do that?
Hey? Well, as I said,
how would you do that?
Well, there are venues for a number of sports that have yet to be decided. And that could, making sure, going to your good point, making sure that parklands and other venues parklands aren't taken away. So there's still a bit of planning to go on here, Senator.
All right, so I think what I'm hearing, please let me know if I'm wrong, is that in the AOC's view, you would think that it's fine to take away some of that cultural heritage parkland in the city? I'm unclear as to you're saying that...
Sorry, Senator Payne, I just might remind yourself and also Mr Carroll that generally we wouldn't ask people hypothetical, certainly officers of departments, hypothetical questions.
Fine.
It's sort of like it's a bit on the edge there. But anyway, just want to make that point. Yep.
I'll move on to my next question then. I understand that the AOC has objectives relating to sustainability and respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Mr Carroll, did the AOC consult with any heritage or environmental advisors or First Nations representatives before they backed the proposal, for example, in the Swimming Australia proposal for stadiums in Victoria Park? And what advice did the AOC rely on before backing this contentious site, even if it's just in the context of the Swimming Australia proposal?
Well, the case of Swimming Australia's proposal is that it is a concept that has been put forward for consideration by government, and obviously in the consideration of that, there would have to further discussion would have to be had with both for the parkland, as you've described it, and also for any cultural requirements as well and impact. And at this at this point in time, those issues have not been addressed, so they're up for consideration. And before any proposal could rightly go ahead, you'd have to take that into account.
All right. So there hasn't been any consultation at this point in time with First Nations or heritage or environment representatives.
Senator, not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Okay. Last question, Mr Carroll, and I appreciate you giving me your time. Victoria Park Stadium will require earthworks and blasting. It's public knowledge that the Victoria Park terrain is inclined and has a very tough rock formation. Given the cost to taxpayers for Olympic infrastructure, has the AOC to this point in time consulted with engineers or advisors to understand the geotechnical risk before publicly advocating for what could be a very costly proposal for taxpayers?
Well, Senator, again, the AOC is good at a number of things. Assessing the geotech of a site is not in our area of knowledge nor responsibility. That is a matter for the agencies concerned, and therefore I would imagine the matter for the government to ensure that is part of their study of a proposal. But at this point in time, there is no proposal to build anything in terms of a stadium on the park.
Well, there's certainly a proposal to build a number of swimming venues, which are stadiums on the park. Yeah. So at this point, So I think what I'm hearing is that the AOC has backed Swimming Australia's proposal, but that's before there's been any geotechnical or any other advice obtained. All right, thank you. That's all, Chair. Thanks very much.
Pleasure, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Payne. Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you. G'day, Mr Carroll.
Afternoon, Senator.
Thank you on behalf of everyone that loves sport, and wish you all the very best for your future endeavours. I just had a couple of questions. Just some commentary around the re-establishment of the independent authority. I'm assuming AOC is very happy about that?
Yeah, well, yes. Look, as I said, we were involved with the process to appoint the previous authority. That's been changed. We note that some members of that previous authority are still are on the new authority, which is good. We're very pleased that the government of Queensland is moving ahead as rapidly as they see fit and need to get organised for the infrastructure and the services that they're going to have to provide under the independent authority.
When do we start to get worried? Because it seems to me we've sort of wasted 3 years. And, this Senate inquiry is just the classic case in point. We heard issues, as we've said before, from overseas stakeholders were concerned about the rollout of the Games, particularly the transport infrastructure, not so much the facilities themselves. And we've still seemed to have a bit of a drag on that. And then we've sort of had a couple of years where literally nothing's been done. So I'm just wanting to understand, not just from the AOC, but obviously you're in conversations with international stakeholders across the board in that role. What is their perspective around transport infrastructure? Have those fears been allayed, or is there still now a growing concern, as there was nearly 3 years ago when it was first raised with me, that we haven't got the transport infrastructure piece rolling out at a pace that I guess we would expect to see this far out from the Games.
Well, I think the Brisbane Games was awarded the longest time period of any Games in the history of the Olympics. So it was awarded very early, yes, which is both a blessing and a curse in some ways. It's a blessing because after time, a curse because you've obviously got to plan a long way out. As I understand, so in terms of where they're at, I think we're okay. As I said to the Chair. In terms of infrastructure around transport, I'm not aware of the International Olympic Committee expressing any concerns at this point in time.
It wasn't the International Olympic Committee, it was international stakeholders.
Okay.
So not the IOC specifically, but, other, shall we say, sporting bodies.
Well, the other, as far as our concern, is the other international stakeholders are the international federations and obviously the National Olympic Committees. And they've expressed no concerns to us or, as I understand, to the organising committee, Brisbane 2032, at this point in time. You'd expect a lot of our stakeholders are somewhat focused on the Winter Games in Milan Cortina, which is still being finalised in some of their infrastructure. And they're a year out from the Games, and Los Angeles 2028, which is obviously into their 4-year countdown.
Mr. Carroll, I just wanted to sort of get one of the projects that has experienced difficulties is that Sunshine Coast Rail. Is it still your understanding that the beach volleyball is going to be at Broadbeach?
As at this point in time, that decision hasn't been concluded about where the beach volleyball will be held, but it is certainly Broadbeach is flagged as the location.
Well, I thought it was going to be and we were going to have some temporary seating for about 12,000 people, etc.
Yeah. That, as I understand, is the case. It's certainly, as you know, the games plan, particularly the venues plan, as I said at the very beginning, it hasn't been finalised, locked away. There is opportunity still to move those things if they so choose, they being the organising committee with approval, both of the International Federation and the IOC.
So has the International Federation raised any concerns with Broadbeach as a potential venue?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
So it would be your understanding or the AOC's understanding that there's nothing wrong with Broadbeach and that the original plan has not seen any change?
No.
Or has there been submissions to change where beach volleyball?
There's been no changes to the original venues as stated in the candidature documents at this point, apart from where they've been flagged, e.g. the stadium. We've been talking about the new stadium. Yeah.
Okay, so given that, how are you thinking people are going to get to the beach volleyball without the Sunshine Coast Rail?
Again, Senator, the Australian Olympic Committee's involvement in the Games planning is obviously around the delivery of the Games. The delivery of infrastructure and transport is a matter for government and through the independent authority.
Yes, now I know who's responsible, Mr. Carroll, but with your wealth of experience, I'm wanting to understand. We know who's responsible. It would seem to me that there's been significant delays and indeed cuts by certain levels of government to these projects, which are actually going to be fundamental for not the athletes per se, but for spectators, administrators and volunteers to actually get on site in a timely manner and efficient manner. We know that the transport infrastructure is how we have a great Games. Because you're going to have actual humans watching, not just on the TV. So I would like your perspective on that. I would like your actual experienced commentary.
The solution of transports for the Games, again, is a matter for government. And how they go about that solution, by either building new infrastructure, new transport links, or using existing, or just for the Games times have an overlay. And Los Angeles is having an overlay of transport for the LA Games, and they're very conscious because those games are spread out not just in LA, but they're spread across California in a number of venues. So they are coming up with a solution for that, which they have to do both, you're quite right, not just for athletes, but also for spectators, because again, everyone wants to fill stadia. The proposals are matters for the government to put that together at the time. If they change their view, they still have to provide a transport plan to the IOC in the coming years.
So when would that transport plan, if they changed the plan, be due? I'd
have to take on notice to check that period. Yeah, I can take that on notice. Yep.
But it's your contention that the AOC does not have any concern with the transport infrastructure as envisaged in the original documents, given the facility venues haven't changed.
At this point in time, no, we don't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Senator Mackenzie. Well, look, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Carroll. I don't think there are any other questions, and I don't think you took anything on notice, but if you do have any... He did take something, okay. Yeah. If you could provide that... Oh, you did just at the end there, that's right. If you could provide that back to us by Friday the 21st of February 2025, that would be great. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you. So we might suspend briefly, given the number of witnesses we've got next.